Hello and welcome, I'm Dr. Troy Munson. This is our week 2 of Food is Medicine, Common Medicinal Foods in Your Cupboard. And this week, it's about honey. Honey is an amazing food, is it not? If you don't love it, I'm not a big fan of honey. I don't know why, I just don't enjoy the taste of it, but I just know it's that good for me. So I use it because it is so amazing. And we're not talking about store-bought honey that is honey-flavored high fructose corn syrup, which is what most honey bought in a store is. And I think people are realizing that. That's why all of these brands that are actual honey are putting on it raw. And you hope that our wonderful structure of our industries don't allow companies to put raw on a bottle that is indeed high fructose corn syrup that's just honey flavored. But I digress. So I am careful about where I get my honey. I do know the person that keeps the bees, so that's the way I like it. I like to just be certain about something like that, especially honey. Now, to give you a quick overview, what does honey have in it that makes it so amazing? It's an amazing source of vitamin C, and if you didn't know this, the bee pollen that is mixed with honey, it's much thicker and richer, and if it's done at a concentration high enough, it's actually called royal jelly. And it's what they feed the queen because it's so high in nutrition because of the bee pollen. Now, the higher the bee pollen content in the honey, the higher the vitamin C content. So a little kind of tidbit for you. I have some people that eat bee pollen, and I love bee pollen. If you've never had it, you should experience it at least once in your life. They're like little they're bigger than a grain of sand, but they're kind of maybe a third the size of a grain of rice maybe. But some are bigger, some are dark, some are light. But I would just take handfuls and just throw them back. We used to have bags of it. I loved it. It was so good. I had no idea, though, that it's where all the vitamin C was, and added to honey, it makes it even richer. Now, with honey also comes the trace minerals, as well as, of course, lots of potassium. So what does honey do for it? Why should it be kind of a food medicine in our medicine cabinet? Apart from being just a whole food and really being rich, it is amazing at things like burns and even coughing, like a cough syrup mixed with water, and especially so with raw apple cider vinegar. So why is it so good with burns and with coughing and with some types of infections? Well, this is an interesting study. This is a book that I have read a number of times, and if you've never read it and you've been around nutrition for a while, it should be in your or on your bookshelf, so to speak. It is Folk Medicine by D.C. Jarvis, M.D. It was first written, and he published it back in, I believe, 1958. And it has been published or republished many, many times. My particular copy is 1991. And on page of this one, 100, he talks about at the Colorado Agricultural College in Fort Collins, Dr. W.G. Sackett, I love these names, a bacteriologist to put honey to the test. He frankly did not believe that honey would destroy these bacteria or any disease bacteria. So in his laboratory, he placed various disease germs in a pure honey medium and waited. The results astounded him. Within a few hours' time, or at most a few days, each of the diseased microorganisms died. Now, there's an old wives' tale out there that says, what should you do with honey in infants? Correct. Not feed it to infants. We're going to basically debunk that as well. Now, what does that old wives' tale say? That a child could get meningitis. Well, I believe these doctors actually proved it. And a little bit later, I'm going to read to you a section in this book where they have a number of doctors that were testing blood sugar in infants to young teens, late, 7 years of age to 13, kind of that range. And they basically did blood tests on them every 15 minutes of doing different sugars. And what they found is that honey did the least spiking of blood sugar, but the most sustained energy level of sugars in the blood without spiking. And so we're going to get to why that's important in just a moment, but let's continue here. So he literally tested things like typhoid fever, A and B typhus, another strain. He tested bronchopneumonia, found them dead on the 4th day. What I found fascinating is these typhoid type bacillus that he found in the gut for like typhoid fever, literally 5 hours they were dead. Sometimes it might take 10 hours for others, but he just kept finding like dysentery type germs, 10 hours dead. And so he did these experiments, and they were duplicated by other physicians, not just him, a lot of other physicians, because a lot of them didn't believe it. They had to do it themselves. They just thought, how is this possible? Well, of course, we find honey is still good after 2,000 years in a tomb. So if bacteria are everywhere and funguses are everywhere, shouldn't have that been bad or eaten up or something? And what they find is that it's very antiseptic. So do we really think that if it's real honey, that it's going to cause an infant to have meningitis? I doubt it. I doubt it so much, I'm willing to bet a lot of money on it. But for the rest of us, if you're a little freaked out, then you wait till 6 months to feed your children honey. Why 6 months? What's this magic 6-month mark? When a child begins to crawl, that act of cross-crawl pattern that they're doing when they crawl on the ground begins to activate their immune system, because when they start to crawl, they shove everything where? In their mouths. And so as they start sampling their environment by putting everything in their mouth to try and figure out how dangerous is this place, that's when the immune system really needs to kick up and go to work. So you can wait until 6 months to give your infants honey if you wish. If it's real raw honey, it probably can be given at any age. So it's just on your level of comfort and your understanding. Go ahead and do you, I'll do me. So with that in mind, there is a lot of iron in honey. And that iron is going to make it a darker color. So sometimes you'll see honey that's lighter. Sometimes you'll see it darker. The darker the honey, the more iron, and oftentimes the more vitamin C or that bee-pollen that makes it so. So let's say that you know that maybe you have a little bit too much iron in your blood. You're going to want to go with a lighter honey. But ultimately, the vitamin C that's in it, I have a sneaking suspicion, is going to help you process some of that iron. Now, with all of that wonderful vitamin C and iron that's in the honey, this is why athletes do an amazing job with honey. In fact, they did an experiment and they said, hey, we want some athletes to do sucrose, some to do high fructose corn syrup, others to do maple syrup. And they tested all these sweeteners and others to do honey. The ones that did the honey rated the highest performance because they noticed that it sustained them. And so that is why athletics can be so vitally important for part of this medicinal purpose. Let's say that we're in this, post-apocalyptic world and we find honey and we have to go out hunting. You'd want to make sure you have honey with you as you begin to run and do things and chase animals down that we need to survive, because we don't have any grocery stores anymore, because we're in this post-apocalyptic world. So that's why honey should be in our medicine cabinet, especially in weird times. And so one of the things we should have seen fly off the shelves with COVID was raw honey, not toilet paper. I just digress there for a moment. But so be it. So now we start to understand why burns are going to be helped because it's antiseptic, why coughing or having a cough syrup made from honey and especially something like a raw apple cider vinegar, that's going to be antiseptic. We now understand that there's these lots of trace minerals, vitamin C, iron, potassium. Athletes, of course, would be in the mix on that. Now, bedwetting is a little bit interesting and mild laxative. Now, the one thing that honey does is begin to straighten out our gut because it seems to be very nutritive to help restore the gut itself. So some of you out there with Crohn's disease or irritable bowel syndrome or diverticulitis, you'll find some amazing help by doing real, raw honey, and not just a little bit. Now, the potassium in it can be very relaxing and help the adrenals do their job, and it's also a mild sleep aid or sedative, but not like a drug where you're knocked out. It simply is a calming and relaxing substance. That's what honey is. But that potassium that does that is also going to act like a mild laxative. Not make your bowels loose, but if you tend to lean towards constipation, you may find yourself very much helped by a little bit of honey. Sometimes a lot of honey. Bedwetting itself, though, is partly this amped up system where if we have a child who is very high energy and seems to be a bit keyed up most of the time, you may find that honey actually chill them out, where red dye number 40 or whatever it is and high fructose corn syrup just completely send them off the deep end. But when we have this balancing of blood sugar with honey, we now have a liver that performs better. It doesn't have to wake the kidneys up to filter and therefore fill the bladder, and now I'm wetting my bed in the middle of the night. But it's also helping with infection, which could be mildly running in the bladder, and therefore a little bit of a stimulatory effect and resulting in bedwetting. There are many different ideas when it comes to how honey actually does help bedwetting, but the research is out there, and it is somewhat helpful. So this is honey in a nutshell. Now, I'm going to give you a little bonus here on honey. It can be helpful in addictive tendencies. Why? Weak adrenals, the adrenals that sit on top of our kidneys, they need lots of vitamin C and trace minerals. And honey is wonderful at providing that. So as we provide that vitamin C and potassium and trace minerals, our addictive tendencies seem to be curtailed. Now, D.C. Jarvis, in the back of this book that I mentioned, he actually talks about an incident where he fed an alcoholic. It was amazing how much honey he put through this individual. It was like 2 pounds of honey in less than 6 or 8 hours, or maybe it was 24 hours, but it was a very short period of time. And he had a fifth of, I think it was vodka or whiskey or whatever he put on the side table in the evening, and he said it was finished. But then in the morning when he started doing the honey again, it was like 6 tablespoons every half hour. It was a massive amount of honey. By that afternoon, the person did not have a taste for alcohol anymore. They were like, I don't want to see that again. And they were in essence, quote unquote, cured. So a little side note, never done it, never had an addict say, hey, would you help me go through this and let's just do a ton of honey. Never had anybody take me up on that offer. But if you're out there and let's say you've got the gumption or you've got somebody in your possession that you love dearly, but they are just a hopeless alcoholic, what else you got to lose? My gosh, you might as well try it. Find yourself a beekeeper, get a good gallon of honey, and just start rolling. But I'd first start in reading D.C. Jarvis's book, and I would get comfortable with what they did. I hope that was helpful. Until next time, I'm Dr. Troy, and remember, there's way more right with you than there is wrong with you.